G'day guys, it's Paul from Polyman Astro here, and welcome to a new segment which I'm going to call Drizzled. I'm hoping that this segment will inspire you to take a closer look at your images. I want two things to happen. One, well, we spend so much time gathering data and probably just as much time processing our data. Why not spend the time to actually just sit back and enjoy our image? Take a look at it. Be proud of what you created. And the second thing I want us to do is to hopefully look a little bit deeper and find some hidden gems tucked away in the image that we didn't know were there, and that might inspire us to research into things a little bit more and gain a deeper understanding about what it is that we just imaged. Okay, so in this first episode of Drizzled, we're going to look at NGC 3576, the Statue of Liberty Nebula. And if we jump into Google just quickly, we'll see it's one of those nebulas that actually looks like its namesake. Unlike certain other nebulas in the very close region to this, in fact. And yes, I'm looking at you, Running Chicken Nebula. Or should I say, Running Chicken McNugget Nebula. Anyway, let's jump into Google and have a look. So if I go to NGC 3576, the first thing I see on Google is a Wikipedia entry and some photos. And I can see from these images, if I just look through, I can definitely see it looks like its namesake, the Statue of Liberty Nebula. But I think they lost a huge opportunity here. We've named a Southern Hemisphere gem after a Northern Hemisphere icon. Fine, but we lost an opportunity. I've heard people talk about this nebula as the Princess Leia Nebula, and I just feel for something that's so far, far away, I keep saying we lost an opportunity, but we did. I think that's a perfect name for this nebula. But anyway, let's jump into PixInsight and do what we're supposed to do with Drizzle. We'll take a closer look at this image. Okay, we're in PixInsight, so let's take a look. But before we do that, the whole point of this segment, Drizzled, kind of stems from this image that I was producing here. There was a serendipitous accident. What I intended to happen was I knew that NGC 3576, the Statue of Liberty, was going to perfectly fill my frame with my 71mm refractor and the 183 sensor. But I got the orientation 90 degrees off. So instead of it fitting perfectly in the middle of the frame, it ended up sideways and off to the left of the frame, as you're about to see. So when this image first came through, I remember watching it on my phone come through live. There was the Statue of Liberty on the left, perfect. But there was this unusual nebulosity here that I wasn't expecting to see, because I wasn't expecting this orientation in my frame. That's what Drizzled's all about. What are these things that we weren't expecting to see in our image? And we do research on them, and we learn a little bit more about the overall scene. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the fully processed image. So here it is, let's make it a bit larger. And you can see the Statue of Liberty off to the left and NGC 3572 off to the right. Let's take a closer look at that object first, because that's the whole point of Drizzle. Let's look at the things that we weren't expecting to see in our image. And we can see there's some structure here. There's some wonderful shock waves, some shock fronts. It's not all green. There is some cyan and there is some orangey yellow. The orangey yellow would signify that there's some sulfur in these regions around here. So we've got these shock fronts. We've also got these dark dust clouds, which are hopefully coming through on YouTube compression. So there is some really nice structure in this object. And in fact, I liked the look of these brighter objects here. Just here and up here. And it reminded me of a Northern Hemisphere object called the tadpoles. So I thought, why not call it the Southern tadpoles? And in fact, if we go to Google and we type in AA pod southern tadpoles, then we should see, if we can find it, here we go. Let's try and type it in. Can we search southern tadpoles? So if you haven't seen the AA Pod 2 website before, it's the amateur astronomy photo of the day. And in October of 2020, I was surprisingly awarded the AA Pod of that day. I wasn't expecting it. And here it is. This is a slightly different processed version of that image. But I just really liked this region. It was surprising. I told the story when I went through. They didn't post all of the story, but of how I serendipitously found this object. So that was a nice surprise, and I definitely recommend you look at the AA Pod website if you haven't seen it before. I really like this green structure here. That looks like with a larger aperture that could be quite a nice little structure. And there's a blue structure here that I'm not 100% sure whether it's an artifact in my image or whether it's real. So again, I'd love to do some more imaging on this and see whether that was true. So we're doing the namesake. We're looking through our image here and trying to find things that we weren't expecting to see. So let's zoom back out again. So what we might do now is we'll jump across and look at NGC 3576. We'll take a closer look at the Statue of Liberty Nebula, and there are two hidden gems within this region. Well, three really hidden gems within this region. So we'll put this image away now, the wide field, and we'll zoom in a bit closer on the Statue of Liberty. So here we go, we've got it nicely cropped, and this is how I intended the image to look when I first took it. But we wouldn't have found NGC 3572 if I'd framed it this way. So as I said, it was quite serendipitous. So this is a beautiful region. We've got these wonderful golden tendrils with a touch of blue up here, the wonderful blue kind of flowing dress that the Statue of Liberty is wearing, and these wonderful dark finger-like tendrils of dark gas running over the top. And then over here we've got this wonderful cyan green object with this orange section in the middle. Okay, so the Statue of Liberty Nebula, if you do a little bit of research on it, is about 9,000 light years away. This object here is not 9,000 light years away. It's more than double the distance. So this dark gas is over the top of it. Some of this nebulosity belongs, like the yellow nebulosity here, belongs to the Statue of Liberty. But this kind of cyany region, and particularly this orange section here, is over 18,000 light years away. And if we zoom in on it, we can see there's this really nice cluster of stars there. And in fact, I can't remember the exact Trumpler designation for this bunch of stars, but in fact it's the tightest cluster with the biggest proportion of the largest stars in the whole galaxy, if that makes sense. There's more large stars in this section, all tightly packed together, than anywhere else in the galaxy. And in fact, this nebulosity region, even though it looks much smaller than the Statue of Liberty, is the largest nebula in the whole galaxy by far. Amazing to think. So again, a little bit of research into your images and you find out all this fascinating information. Absolutely astounding what you can see. But what I want us to really zoom in on now is two other hidden gems that are actually, even in this zoomed in version here, are actually visible. And I only found them recently when I happened to be looking at someone else's image. So let's take a closer look at those now. Alright, so let's take a look at those two truly hidden gems. I should have pointed out actually in the last segment, that massive nebula is actually NGC 3603. I forgot to say that. If you want to research it, truly staggering the size of this nebula, and it looks the same size as this thing because it's so much further away. Anyway, I should do a shout out to the website I actually found these next to. One of them's reasonably big, so it's easy to see, but the other one I never would have found by myself. So astroedda.com here, he has a wonderful version of this. He's got far more data and far darker skies than I do, so his color palette is astounding. As you can see for NGC 3603 here, the colors through it are absolutely amazing. And what he's got hidden in his image, which is he's got a much bigger aperture than I do, is this object just down here, which he's labelled as GN 11.14.4. It's a tiny little nebula, and in his image you can see it's got these wonderful loops and arcs in it, and you can see there's some yellows and blues, so there is some interaction between the three gases in this nebula. In mine, unfortunately, it's almost out of frame because I didn't know it was there, but it is there, and with my aperture, unfortunately, you can't get the resolution that he did, but you can see there are those loops and arcs, and you can definitely see there is, along those loops and arcs, there is some yellow with the green center. So there is, even with my resolution, we can see the interaction of gases. That's why I love pure narrowband palettes so much, and did some videos on it, because you can just learn so much about the interplay of the gases. But the other thing that he found, and I do recommend you have a closer look at his image because it is a lot deeper than mine, but just up here, let's see if we can find it. Yep, there it is. It's actually dead center already. Is this little green thing here? It's actually a tiny planetary nebula, and I haven't been able to find any more information about it other than its designation. So again, on the Astroedda website, it's PN Planetary Nebula G291.400.3. Okay, whoops. And you can see even with his resolving power, he didn't get much more detail on it than I did. But that's a true hidden gem right there. Look at that. So we've got these wonderful dark dust bands hidden here in this tiny little planetary nebula, sitting right next to the tendrils of the Statue of Liberty, and sitting just above NGC 3603. Okay, so there we go, folks. That's the point of Drizzled. I want us to take closer looks at our images. Like I said, for two reasons. Just enjoy your images. You spend so much time gathering the data and processing it. Enjoy your image. I mean, you've taken all that time to produce a beautiful image that you're proud of. Look around. Zoom in. It doesn't matter if there's, when you zoom in, there's a lot of noise there in the background. Just have a look. What are you going to find? What are the things that you weren't expecting to see? Sometimes they're going to be really obvious, like NGC 3572, and sometimes they're going to be truly hidden away, like that tiny little planetary nebula. And hopefully it inspires you to research, to go online and have a look at what are these things called? Are there any papers on it? It's fascinating. And it's all there in your image. And if you use pure narrowband palettes and you use a color managed workflow, then the colors are going to tell you so much about what's happening within those structures. Even if you don't have the resolution power of a 1 meter telescope in Chile, as you saw with that smaller nebula, you can still see that there's some structure there, and you can still learn something about the interplay of the gases. And yeah, I'm doing it more and more with my images, and hopefully it's going to inspire you to do the same. So look for the next episode of Drizzled. I haven't decided what image I'm going to look at yet, but we're going to do the same kind of thing. I hope you've learned something, and I hope it inspires you to look closer at your images. I'm Paul from Polyman Astro. Thanks for watching.